Welcome to the Hermitess Podcast with Andrea Cox, the only plant-based astrology podcast focusing on Hermetic principles, cellular detoxification, and mystery teachings. Andrea's interviews include her celebrity clients, NBA ball players, musical composers, detoxification specialists, and world-renowned healers just like Andrea. Andrea is a model-turned-celebrity detox specialist, intuitive healer, and holistic wellness and life coach. You will find only authentic people interviewed on this podcast. Real recognizes real. Andrea prides herself on only inviting those who are uniquely creative.
Hello and welcome to the Hermitess Podcast. So Professor Spira is an author, jazz trombonist, just say it one more time, man.
Ethnomusicologist.
Ethnomusicologist, university lecturer, founder of Mucus-Free Life LLC, and the most sought-after expert on Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System in the world. Thank you, Maverick. He has helped hundreds of thousands of people learn the healing benefits of the mucus-free lifestyle. After discovering the diet in 2002, you're such a baby. Within a year, he lost over 100 pounds, interesting, and overcame numerous health issues, including chronic migraines, fatigue, joint pain, allergies, and chronic constipation, among others. Professor Spira publishes 8 books related to the mucus-free lifestyle, including his best-selling, noted, revised, and edited edition of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. He is the webmaster of mucus-free-life.com and the #1 producer of educational resources for mucus-free living on the planet. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
So I actually found you on Instagram. What is your Instagram profile name?
Prof.Spira.
Prof.Spira. And I was amazed that he was teaching everything I learned like 20 years ago. Of course, I learned by Gil Jacobs when I took a trip from Ohio to New York City and was handed the great Arnold Ehret's little blue book and was told to start food combining. And I was a fitness model at the time. And he basically changed in one colonic with Gil Jacobs, changed my whole view on eating. And so when I see someone young, how old are you?
So I'm 39.
39, and looks like he's 24, you guys. He's a beautiful specimen of a man here. When I saw you teaching this, I was just like blown away. I saw your baked apples and I was like, oh my God, he knows about the baked apples.
Yeah.
Like, and I think the video that caught my eye recently that you shared was the girl's tonsils. The girl, I was just like floored. I'm like, this guy is so woke, because basically, in a sense, what you were putting out there to the world is we have to be more careful of who we're kissing, who we're sleeping with, who we're interacting with energetically. How did you get into this?
So I got into this 20 years ago. I was 300-pound former varsity football player, aspiring professional musician at the College Conservatory of Music, University of Cincinnati. And I really felt horrible and had a ton of issues, but I just thought that was my lot in life, that I inherited all of this stuff because I had just a sick mother and that kind of thing. So I had that false belief. But I met a good friend of mine who became a friend and mentor, Willie Smart, aka Brother Air, who at that time had been himself practicing the mucusless diet for over 20 years. And today he's been practicing it over 40 years. And he just introduced me to the diet. It was actually at a jazz jam session, and I had this big plate. They had this free food there. I had this big plate of all this messy, nasty food, and I'm sitting there eating these chicken wings, and his face just turns like he can't hold it any longer. He has to tell us his secret, and he started telling me and my friend about the Mucusless diet and just the whole philosophy. And as he did that, my hand got slower and slower, where I was no longer eating this dead animal in front of me. And after that, I got the book and started studying it, started practicing it, and the rest was history. It just total transformation. 6 months later, I had lost 100 pounds and got off a CPAP unit for sleep apnea and got off of pharmaceutical medications, Allegra D and all that nonsense. And
all those things that suppress our mast cells that release what we need to know when a food is not for our highest good. And, I have to say, so you're 39, you're going to be 40, right?
Correct.
And you do have, I'm just going to say, you do have the black gene that forever youthful, but there's something to the mucusless diet and anti-aging, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I attribute a lot of that to practicing the diet. I don't know if you ever saw before and after of me, but I looked older at the age of 17 than I do almost now. Because I was, big and blow, I looked, so when I had first, I looked about 15 when I first started. Like when I first started the diet, I went from looking like I was in my 30s to back to 15, and then I've been slowly aging since then up to wherever I'm at now. But it really is the fountain of youth, all that stuff that people are looking for. I don't use any creams or any of that stuff. I just practice the diet and that's it. No special soaps or expensive, any of that kind of stuff. I just keep it real simple. And I can tell the people that do that work, because they do just look, there's just a certain look to the skin and kind of youthfulness that you have, when you're really doing this work.
Now, let me ask you something. So how does your family embrace it? Do they live this lifestyle? Or because it's really hard when you do have family members that don't kind of awaken to it and you see the decline. It's difficult. It's very usually it takes like a health crisis, and you share a lot about that. What I love about your Instagram videos, and you guys follow this guy on Instagram. I'm censored as hell on there, and so I have no option of growth, but he's so what I love is you're so honest about everything. Like you show like people being carried to their funeral after, eating like shit, the sad, standard American diet. And I love that about you. Like I loved, as soon as I found you, I was like, this guy's authenticity is so freaking real. And then I stalked your page for the last week. I looked at I creeped in on your followers and stuff. And I was so amazed that you're pulling in such a diverse community that is like, you have got men that are in their 60s and 70s, like cycling and shit, like really living this healthy, vibrant lifestyle. And I was so impressed. So what got you to start doing the Instagram thing? And is your family, have they caught on, or are they?
Yeah. So with the family, if you go back to when I started the diet, and this, I don't recommend this to everybody, is I talk a lot about social dynamics and practicing this lifestyle. And that's one of the things that causes, I used to say it was the number one reason that people were unsuccessful. I don't know if I'd say that today, but I would just meet so many people that would be over their addictions and their cravings, but they get a phone call to go to the restaurant, to go to the bar, to go to the club, and they couldn't say no. And they thought, hey, well, maybe I can just get something there that I can eat. And then they fall off the wagon. And that it was due to a social interaction. So I had made it a very strong commitment to myself. I was not ever going to let that happen. I wasn't going to falter because of social dynamics or worrying what somebody thought about me, if I'm eating the right thing, or if I go to a wedding, like you see me, I'll either fast or I'll bring some fruit and be sitting there eating fruit and everybody's eating all the mess. And I just had that attitude. So I describe it like when I've I've changed a little, not changed. What was interesting, because when I first started, I was really I call it, it was like a combination of Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton, if you put them together, and they were practicing the mucusless diet. I was just really, really intense because back then, as you know, like 20 years ago, we haven't had this vegan renaissance of the past 10 years. In Ohio. Yeah. So you're up against people just angry with you if they hear that you're not eating meat. Like, why are you mad at me for not eating meat? Like, I'm not trying to tell you what to eat, but, so I just was pretty militant about it and just I wasn't worried about trying to fit into any kind of social things. And there was friends and stuff that they weren't going to be friends anymore because we weren't doing I got some folks that I used to be friends with at high school. They still do the same thing we did back then. Like, they're still eating and drinking and smoking just like it was 20 years ago. And the aging, you would talk about aging. It's like to see the people that I went to high school with and to see how they've aged and that they're doing the same stuff we were doing back then. It's like, and so, yeah, as far as the family and the social kind of thing, what I noticed happened was they gave me a hard time at first, but I was just so narrow, like I just, whatever, like I don't need your validation for anything. But they started to give me more respect the longer I was on it. So, 9 years in, 10 years in, it's like, okay, now they're starting to get respect. Every once in a while, I get a question. They're going through something and they might, let me ask, well, so what do you think about this or that kind of thing? And so over time, I will say there hasn't been a lot of family members getting into it. A couple of them maybe have did a fast or did something like that. But I will say that there definitely has been an increase in respect, which is cool.
Yeah, I think I remember, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and I lived in New Albany I had built a house with a man. I was with him 11 years and we built a house in, where is it called? New Albany. Yeah. The little shishi poo poo town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I'm going vegan. His name was Chip. Bless his heart. He's a Leo. I'm like, I'm going vegan. And I was a fitness model. And I said, I'm going vegan. I'm done with eating meat. He told me it was a phase. So I packed up the house and moved the next day back home with my mom in Dayton. And it ended up not being a phase. And I remember a year later, I was going on the news in Dayton and in Columbus promoting my first little recipe book, Raw Recipes. I went 100% raw vegan overnight. I wouldn't even drink tea. And that lasted 11 years. So like you, I was hyper into I was sprouting all my own sprouts. We had Doug Evans on. He's big into sprouting. I was sprouting all my own sprouts, talking to David Wolf and Steve Adler on the phone with Sacred Chocolate, a buddy of mine. And I was just like, okay, I'm sticking to this. But then, did you go through the ugly skinny phase? The phase where you get hyper thin, because I went through that and that was hard for me. That kind of switched me back a little to being kind of an unhealthy vegan, where I was eating, I became like a soy girl for a minute and stuff, just completely oblivious to what I was doing. But where are you now with your diet? I want to know a typical day of what Professor Spira eats from start to finish. It's 3:30. I haven't eaten anything yet. I'm kind of on water with the in it. But what do you eat? I want to know from the time you wake up. Do you do an enema? Do you do coffee enemas? We like to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of coffee enemas. I do lemon juice and distilled water enemas. That's my enema of choice. And I'll put a lot of lemons. I juice lemons with the rind. So I get organic lemons with the rind, juice that, add distilled water and make up the enema bag. And that's kind of what me and the folks in our community, that we're big lemon juice and distilled water enema people. because you can't beat that astringency. I mean, it's something when you're talking about the coffee, don't do that. The coffee is kind of a different kind of thing. But with the lemon juice, you're talking about serious astringency. If there's anything in there, any old, like decades old feces stones that's stuck up in a crevice, or the slime or the parasites, you're going to kill them. I mean, it's just, it's a great tool. And so,
where did you get that from? Because, if you Google baking soda enema, my website comes up. I'm all about the daily shitting. And I personally like the coffee enemas because it stimulates the portal vein to release the old bile from the liver, but you also get stimulated from it. So my question to you is, is that in Arnold Ehret's book?
So that's really like one of the only innovations out that our community that we would maybe say that we made to that, but based on the principles of the mucusless diet. So Arnold Ehret, a few different places, he talks a lot about the enemas, and he's talking about water enemas. And how important it is to definitely do it while you're fasting, or and that even just for general hygiene to do the enemas. And so it was some members of our community that started experimenting with lemon, and then it was Willie Smart, aka Brother Air, that started doing lemon juice enemas exclusively, and just really saw the benefits from it. And so that's really how and then that just stuck in terms of the community, and he would pass that along. And when I tried it, it was like night and day from when I was trying to early on, trying to get off of meat, trying to get off of, those, as long as those poisons and that stuff was still in my gut, I was having those cravings. But the more I was doing those lemon enemas, it was cutting those cravings just gone, because I was getting that stuff out.
You juice the lemon and the rind and everything, which I put in my normal juice I drink, mm-hmm. and you just add it to the bucket of water.
Yeah. So, and I always use the bag. So it's like a quart bag or 2-quart bag. And so add some distilled water with the lemon, and I like to fill the bag all the way up. Brother Air, he'll have a little bit less water, but he likes to be real potent with the lemon. But just fill that up, heat it up, heat the water up, and and administer it. And I have like a full how-to video / blog post that's like the specific directions, because sometimes I have to tell people, almost turn it into like a meditation, get some incense going, like romance yourself a little bit, because some folks they're nervous the first time they do it, so they're trying to so am I doing it right? And then it's like it's not smooth, and so it's like, dim the lights a little bit, get the incense going, light a candle.
My favorite part of the day is it's my favorite.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you just feel so good.
Yeah.
Afterwards. Now, do you do colonics as well?
Not in a long time. I don't. I don't do them that much. They're cool. The way I look at that is it's definitely different tools. When I would much rather have somebody do regular lemon juice and distilled water enemas than like one colonic every 6 months or something. Now there's a number of people in our community that's been getting into the Kalima board. That's actually getting quite popular amongst some folks.
I have a colonic room here. I have a Ditolo and a living machine. I'm like a biohack.
Nice.
But I've had my stuff for years,
Yeah.
The Rife, the Ion Foot Cleanse, the sauna, and I live on a mineral hot spring. So I just moved here about a week ago, and I'm finally hooked up the way I've always dreamed to be hooked up.
Yeah.
In Columbus. But I love that you do the enemas. And what I noticed about you was the wokeness of society in general and the government and everything going on. Like, you can really tell when someone is truly, the third eye is cracked open and they see beyond the illusion. So I want to know what you would give anyone tuning in because everybody's going to follow you. Anyone tuning in, what would you say the number one thing they should do to rise above? And I feel like I know what you're going to say, but to rise above the bullshit we're being faced with on a daily basis. I did a video yesterday how, poverty is being beaten into us right now and how we're all going to, and inflation and all of this. What would you say is the main thing that they should do to rise above what we're being fed and programmed to think?
I mean, for me, the number one thing is learning what to control, or learning to control what you put in your body.
Amen.
Learning how to control what you put in your mouth, because that's the most revolutionary thing that you can do, is to learn how to control what you put in your mouth if you're eating these things that we're talking about, because they didn't plan. That's the one thing they didn't plan for. They didn't plan for people getting into the mucusless diet and getting in raw mucuslessness and those levels of diet where you literally take yourself out of that entire sphere, the hospital and the doctor sphere and the medicine and the, you need your protein and this and that and all. Like, you just take yourself out of that. And when you live this and you can feel that, when you're like, wait a minute, all these people over here that look incredibly unhealthy, they say that I need such and such, but they look horrible. I just did it. I didn't have any of those things and I feel great. I haven't been sick in however long. It lets you, it proves it to yourself. Like, you prove like, oh, okay, this whole thing I've been lied to. This entire thing has just been a big scam. And where once you got to start somewhere. So that's where you start with reading the books and getting into the introductory material, but eventually it inside your body and it's like, okay. And so that's how I found, when you talk about really getting out of the matrix, for me, it started with when I read the Mucusless Diet Healing System book, started practicing it. And then the layers just started to naturally come in, particularly because I got into fasting quite a bit in those early, like those first 10 years. I did a lot of long-term fasts and stuff. And of course, when you do that, you start to really wake up and see things in a whole different way. And so, but yeah, just being on the path is what I recommend, is get on the path and you take yourself out of that, just all of the madness. And you kind of, Brother Air has a great quote. He says, get out of the way, step out of the way and let the universe do whatever it's going to do. Like, get out of the way. And then you're just watching it. You're just watching all the result of pus and mucus eating, just the destruction of society. You just kind of sit back and drink a juice and watch it, because you're not going to change. There's certain things that have been put into motion. You're not going to change that. So you might as well just kind of get out of the way, let it take itself out. And, because the people that are supposed to hear this message are going to hear it.
Yeah.
And, because there's some people like, man, I gotta get this and tell people. And I'm like, look, like, we do our best to get the message out there, but it's, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that still can't hear it. They haven't had enough pain. They're not ready yet. They still enjoy the stupidity and the stimulation of all this stuff, trying to, keeping up with the Joneses and the Kardashians and all that kind of stuff is, so there's a lot of people you're not going to reach, but
Yeah. And it's so hard because I live that lifestyle. I mean, hence right here, I was like 19 years old, and only time I ever touched my body was this. And now I'm having to go through a whole removal process. And I keep thinking, what on God's earth was I thinking? And I was so wrapped up. But anyway, the one thing I want to know is, first of all, where do you want to take this? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because for me, and he's a Sagittarius for all of you tuning in, I feel he's got some Aries somewhere prominent in his chart, because when I hear someone like you dissecting these people's videos and stuff, I think to myself, leadership, leadership, leadership. Like looking at you, I feel like you're about to step into a leadership role somehow. Sorry to put the pressure on you, but where do you see yourself taking this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always been that way. As you go back when I was growing up, I was in Boy Scouts and I became like the youngest Eagle Scout and was running I was the first Black senior patrol leader, and I was 15, and I learned a lot about society and all the stuff that I learned a lot in that, like the stuff that you're not supposed to learn, like the real life lessons and stuff. So I've always been interested in that and drawn to those type of positions, or I'd be the person that would speak up or whatever. And so that was a kind of a natural fit for me with this path, because when I started becoming a professional musician, and what goes into that, you're practicing an instrument for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And like, if you just want to get a little good, you have to devote so much time. And I was doing that, and I had kind of thought, okay, well, that was fun when I was a kid, but now I just want to focusing on being an artist. But the diet kind of brought back around, like, no, everything is needed. Like all those skills that you had before. I mean, I won an award for entrepreneurship when I was in 6th grade. I went to regional competitions, and we had created a business plan and had to sell a product and that kind of stuff. And so I kind of had these little bits and pieces of things. And then I ended up growing up and doing what I did when I was young. I used to make little radio with a Fisher Price tape recorder. I'd make little radio shows, and I'd love to record stuff and talking to people and doing all that kind of stuff, and just performing in general, just being on stage. That was just where I was most comfortable.
I see like TEDx. I see talking on a stage with you. So I wanted to say that. But then my other question was, we had Dan McDonald on. He was one of the first. I've known Dan for 20 years. So we literally had a fight on the podcast. Well, because we were talking about, I really think plant-based is the way. And this is what I just remembered what I was going to ask you. This is Lewis has come to see you now. He's almost 19, by the way.
Hey, Lewis.
He's not vegan. He eats mucus, but raw diet eater. But this is my question to you. Dan and I were having the discussion, and Dan's like, if someone wants to eat eggs, let them eat eggs. If someone wants, and I was pissed because I didn't want people that were first coming on the podcast that didn't know me from YouTube to think that was the way to go. Because I personally, and I have friends that are in like they eat like the raw butter and stuff like that. And then me personally, I think no matter what your blood type is, because you look like are you an O blood type to me?
I don't even know, because we don't study like type like that, because we're looking at blood in a whole different way,
I personally think that veganism and the mucus-free diet is the best way to go. What do you say to people that are like, well, as long as it's raw, if you eat some raw butter, what do you say to those people that are lax on that? Because for me, it's about the animals at this point. I mean, I'm a huge animal lover.
Right.
I'm a priest of animals, but for me, it's about the animals. What do you think? To each his own, like Dan said, or do you think this is the way, man? This is the way.
Well, yeah, no, this is the way. But here's where because like with that, when you talk about the baked apple, I'll get raw people mad at me. So that's usually like, well, you put something cooked up there. Like, what? I thought you were 100% raw, and they like totally miss it. I'm into mucus-free. Yeah. And so when I get in arguments with the raw people, it's basically, look, I would rather somebody eat, I disagree with this idea like that raw is evil and that all raw food is created equal. So the argument that I ended up getting in is say, look, I'd rather see somebody eat the Mucusless diet, which includes raw and cooked, and cooked mucus-free vegetables to be grounded when you need it, to have that kind of stability.
Starch? Do you like baked starch as well, like baked sweet potatoes and things?
Well, but you prepare it properly. You essentially can turn it mucus-free. So you bake it long enough, you bake the starch out of it. And so, there's certain things that I ate a lot of, because I have a really long video that I did what I eat in a day on the Mucusless diet. But what I do is I take people through the changes of what my diet looked like over the years, where what I ate years 1 to 3 is different from what I ate in years like 10 to 15 is different from 15 to 20. And so that was always kind of a hard thing for me to answer to people, because they'd be like, so what are you eating today? I'm like, I could tell you, but it's not going to help you, because you're not going to understand the transition that I went through to get to where I'm eating right now. And so I always try to illustrate that. And and then when I listen to guys, some of the folks in the raw community, they're so scared to talk about their transition. They don't even want to put it in those terms, because there is a point where they, and then they'll accidentally talk about it, but they disregard it like it was like they weren't born yet. It's like, no, that was part of your transition. I was talking about this. I don't know if you know Eli Martyr. And he's a stunt man, and he's got a fruitarian channel, and he was talking about he just kind of naturally was transitioning. He didn't know, but he was just, his body was taking him on this transition. So by the time he had got the information, he was closer to, he was able to get on a pretty strict regimen. And so now, so that's one part of it. When you're talking about dealing with the public, I am an advocate for people learning a little, read, how to win friends and influence people. Go back to the old school stuff and learn how to communicate with people, so that you're not just throwing this stuff in their face, but you intrigue them. You make them like, well, wait a minute. And so when people, I've converted a lot of people, because I'm not in their face. Like if you meet me on the street or something like that, I'm not trying to, like, oh, you need to read this. It's kind of like they start asking me questions, and I say something that just makes them like, they have to keep asking me questions. And so it's where they talk about sales by permission. They're giving me permission to tell them about this, because I'm setting it up the right way. And then eventually it's like, hey, look, if you're truly interested in this, check this book out, or go to this website. At some point I put a boundary there where it's like, if you're interested, you got to do some work now. I introduced you to this. Now you got to go do some work. And so, so that's kind of my thing wherever I go.
So I have 2 more questions for you before I so rudely cut you off. What would you say to someone like me? Like, I'm so bored with what I eat. Okay, so I do the mono fruit thing. Nothing ever goes in my body before a juice. I am a juicing queen. I don't think I've missed a day of juice in like probably 25 years. But I do a lot of water fasting. I find that it's more to like ground my brain than anything else, and like purify my spirit because I live like a hermit. The Hermitess, it's like 4,000 square foot house with me. Me. It's just me and some dogs. Like,
yeah.
But what would you say? So for me, it's more of a spiritual thing. What would you say to someone who I've kind of reverted? So I was 100% raw for 11 years. And now usually it's a big juice. It's mono fruit, like somewhere around 2:30 in the afternoon. I don't get hungry until like 2-3. And like I'll eat a watermelon, or I'll eat pineapple, or I'm into figs right now. Like I'm like all OD on figs. I have some fruit trees here, and I grow 80% of my own food in grow boxes. So I got bread going on. But what would you say to someone who in the evening, it's always a big, huge salad? I'm not into a bunch of overt fats and stuff like that. But then usually it's just a raw salad with maybe some chopped dates or something like that. Sometimes I'll use hemp seeds because I don't find them really mucus forming like nuts. But sometimes, and like I'll eat, like if I feel like I'm lacking selenium, I'll have a Brazil nut. Like I'm very intuitive with my eating. But then sometimes I just want a baked butternut squash that I grew in the garden, and I want a little vegan butter on it or something. Like I'll go that route. But what would you say to someone like me who's in their 40s? And I find baked starch really balances the hormones in a woman. There's like no sign of menopause at all with me. I'm like clockwork monthly with the cycle and all of that. And my hormone levels are perfect according to my doctor. So what would you say to someone like me? Do you think it's ever okay to kind of revert a little bit to a little bit of cooked food or no? And then I have one more question after that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. See, one thing that people sometimes it's hard for them to understand because they see how hardcore I'm coming because I'm very hard on the mental part where like I'm a push you mentally in terms of like getting there and waking up. But once you're practicing the system, then I usually try to get people to rein it in and focus on the transition and don't be hard on yourself. Don't feel guilty and be so narrow where it's like that like all raw or 100% mucus free or that kind of stuff. And so I find myself when I'm working with a lot of people, I'm reining them in and I'm saying, no, it's okay. Have some cooked fruit, have the baked acorn squash, have some steamed kale or some baked zucchini or whatever, some summer squash, that kind of thing, to me is fine. And especially when you combine it with a big raw salad. I mean, that's kind of my rule. When you have cooked vegetables, you have a big raw combination salad anyway, then you incorporate the cooked vegetables in, it's going to help it eliminate well. And if you find something that doesn't eliminate well, meaning you start to have various symptoms of indigestion or acid reflux or anything, then you cut that out. You don't mess with that anymore. But as long as
the only symptom I ever get is bitchy. That's the only symptom I ever get. And I just think that's kind of like a Moon and Scorpio thing. But the only symptom I ever get is like that little witchy bitchy thing. That's when things aren't moving fast enough for me. But I would say energetically, so much more energy than I had in my 20s. It's really crazy. I have another question for you. And I just think you're a wealth of knowledge. Like if I don't see you on a world stage within a year, I'm going to be busting I'm going to be on you because I think you're so freaking genius. Okay. I'm going to bust your ass if I don't see that. I'm going to come after you. I have a girlfriend and she's very young. She's in her 20s. She has a hand, like an inflammation thing. And when I see someone in their 20s struggling with inflammation, we were talking about turmeric paste the other day. What would you suggest to her? Go on the mucus-free diet, right? Study it. Just go on, do the enemas, do things like that, right? Would you suggest? You get into those lemon juice enemas, get into because I don't know what she's eating right now, because that's where we always have to start is like, okay, well, what are you eating now to see how acidic the diet is? But you got to get those acids out of there, get the lymphatic system moving. Now, if you want to take it up a notch, see, I don't always talk about this publicly, one, because there's so many people that already talk about it. They usually talk about it in wrong, in a way that I don't think is a good way to talk about it. But the herbs can be good as long as you're not relying on them and you're not like switching over from this medical mindset and just taking your addiction to medicine and putting them into herbs, which is what I see so many people do. So, but if you can get the diet together first and you understand the principles of the Mucusless diet, then you can bring in something like the lymphatic formulas or herbs that help move the lymph system.
and you combine that in, and if you have something like the grape, you go on a grape fast or the grape juice fast or something like that, incorporate.
Cleanse. Yeah, the big grape cleanse.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get that inflammation out, I mean, depending on how bad it is, you'll get that out, but you want to do the total. It's instead of just trying to do like, okay, I'm gonna do this cleanse or I'm gonna do this fast. It's like, no, I like to see people transition at least a couple weeks before they try any kind of fasting. Generally, like I'll say, okay, just practice a transition diet for a couple weeks. Then if you're ready, we'll do like a 24-hour fast or 48-hour fast. And then go from there. Now, unless it's an incredibly chronic case and you're talking about someone that's on their deathbed, that's just that's like a different video. We talk about being a lot more aggressive right away, but yeah, that you can definitely get that inflammation. Because when I started the diet, I'd played football for 6 years, and I went down on my 3-point stance in my right hand. At the age of 17, I couldn't even open my hand all the way up. This was like inflamed, felt like I was almost had like arthritis at the age of 17. But after practicing the diet and it took a little while, but after a while that all went away. And I got
so much to give to this world, and I want to see her feel better. And my sister just went through that as well. And we can tell you played football, my friend. We can if you guys are listening to this and you haven't seen him, follow him on Instagram. I was just scrolling one day. I was like, who is this? Who's this? But so last but certainly not least, are you going to teach people, because I am a money girl. I like to create abundance in my life, and I have my 3rd recipe book is out right now in Barnes and Noble. It's called Eat Right for the number 4 your zodiac, where I combine astrology and plant-based recipes. I noticed you are like an Amazon king. Like you are on it with your sales on Amazon. Would you consider putting out a program to teach people like myself how to do well on Amazon in the future? Because I'd be right on that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that'd be something that's interesting. Yeah, kind of I mean, that almost goes with, there's a mentorship program that been designing. So I have a coaching program that's actually going to start the next session of that in September. Right. And been doing that for a year. They have the e-course, and those are kind of my main things that I promote. But I wanted to eventually do a mentorship program that would be very different from anything else that I've seen out there, because we would get into like all that kind of stuff from the sales and the marketing. And
how do people hire you for coaching? Do they send you an email? Do you have a link?
So we use the webinar model. And so my next webinar will be, hold on, it's going to be on the 23rd, August 23rd. And I'll probably do one on the 23rd and maybe the 30th as well. But that's been the way that we've been doing it. Pretty much whoever comes to the webinar, and then we go through our program, and then kind of tell people about the coaching program at the end, and have folks sign up right there during the presentation.
We love you, Spira. I'm a huge fan. I'm a groupie now. I'm going to head your female groupie, your cougar Caucasian groupie over here. I'm going to be head of it. We love you. You're a wealth of knowledge. I totally embrace you. And do you have a website?
Yeah, so mucus-free-life.com. If you want to sign up for our mailing list, that's how we announce that the webinars for the coaching. But yeah, mucus-free-life.com. You can come there. There's a ton of free information and blog posts and all that good stuff on there. And then my YouTube channel, if you just type in Professor Spira, I'll pop up there somewhere.
Oh, I'm gonna check you out right now. I have 2 YouTube channels, and I'm gonna be your huge groupie. Like that's all there is.
Yeah. Yeah. YouTube it's gotten, as you know, it sounds like, man, they're so sensitive. I had to delete like 25 videos. They started, what happened was I got over 20,000 followers, and all of a sudden it was like bots attacked my channel, and they found all these videos where I said the V word and, talked about people's medical freedom and this, and that kind of stuff. And
yeah, I have about 23,000 on my health channel, Andrea Cox TV. But see, I was talking about hydrogen peroxide IVs and things 9 years ago. So it's weird. Mine has like over 4 million views, but like 23,000. We got a halter right there.
Right.
I started a spiritual channel that actually took off and is growing bigger than this. But
nice.
But I love you. I'm going to share this video then, with your permission, on my YouTube channels. And because I kind of have like a little cult that are into everything you're talking about. I love you. I am so grateful for you coming on. I cannot talk highly enough about you. I think you're amazing. And I hope you come on again, and I hope to meet you in person. My dogs gravitated in the room when they heard your voice. And thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to check out Andrea Cox's most recent 4th book, Eat Right for Your Zodiac, it's the first book to ever combine astrology with plant-based eating. Andrea's Akashic record readings, holistic wellness coaching, and intuitive life coaching services are sought out by both celebrities and ordinary, everyday people like Andrea herself. If you'd like to connect with her, you can find her at AndreaCox.com, on YouTube at both Andrea Cox TV and The Detox Intuitive, on Facebook at Andrea Lee Cox, and on Instagram at Raw Chef Andrea.